Hi, everyone. My name is Dave Ring. I'm the publisher and managing editor of Neon Hemlock. We're a small press publishing queer and speculative fiction here in Washington, D.C., neighbors of 1455. And I'm delighted to be here to present the first of two rad as hell panels with some rad as hell people. We are down one rad person. Our moderator, Danny Lohr, is unfortunately not able to join us this evening. To get a little bit of Danny in your life, you should buy a book that they're in recently, which is The Memory Librarian with Janelle Monáe, which is more rad as hell stuff. Okay, so today, in lieu of Danny at the helm, we've got a little bit of group delegation, and also Brent is kicking us off here. I've had oh gosh, what's a good word for that? I was gonna say like fine. I don't know. I was gonna say something real nice, Brent. It was gonna be the pleasure, the luck, the opportunity to work with Brent in many capacities, including the most looming his novella, the coming up this fall, The Necessity of Chaos. Really excited about it. And I will pass the reins to Brent and our fine panelists, and can't wait to hear this conversation.
All right, so let's just kick it off. First, I guess I'll do a little introduction and talk a little bit about what the panel is about. So I'm Brent Lambert. I am one of the founders of Fire Magazine. Recently, I had to kind of step back a little bit on that role, but I love them dearly. They are great. They deserve all the support and love in the world. They also are Hugo winners. So, I got to put that out there. I do have a Hugo as well, which is pretty cool.
And currently Hugo nominated.
Twice, actually. I don't know if this has ever happened. But I'm, I guess, competing against myself because I'm nominated twice in the same category. I don't know, but it's kind of cool. I don't know if that's ever actually happened, so someone should look that up. But yeah, I'm also going to have a novella coming out soon through Neon Hemlock called The Necessary Chaos. According to some people who read it, it's spicy. So
it is mad spicy. Like just the first line, it just gets you. I'm not going to spoil anything, but y'all gonna have to read it.
Yeah, so that should be out relatively soon. So look out for that. I have an amazing cover that was done by Kathy Kwan. Everybody's loved it. I love it. So yeah, so I won't go on too much longer, but yeah, that's coming out soon. So yeah, just happy to be here with these writers. I haven't seen some of them in quite some time, so this is really cool. I'll just go around and have everyone introduce themselves. So Ebony, I will start with you.
Sure, I'm Ebony Dunbar. I am a writer based in the Bay Area, California. I've written some short things that have been in FIA, in Anathema, and a couple
and
of
you
other
also
places.
kind of worked there for a while.
I was gonna say that was coming.
Okay.
Former managing editor for Fire Literary Magazine, a fellow Hugo winner, which is so exciting. It's back here somewhere. Fellow Hugo nominee, which is very exciting. And then I have my beautiful, lovely novella from Neon Hemlock, Stone and Steel, which came out 2 years ago now. 2 years? That sounds crazy, but yeah, it is about a woman who has put a queen on the throne and discovers she's not quite everything she was cracked up to be. Yeah, that's me at the moment.
All right, I will kick it off to Mindy next.
Hello all, my name is Mindy Barrett, and I am a writer and a game person. I wrote 2 games with choiceofgames.com. The first one is called something relating to a wolf. I'm sorry. Like it's funny because we changed the name of the game.
Something like, relating to a wolf is a good title. That's a good
title. We should have got that. Like the original title was Wolf Theory, but it's not Wolf Theory. It's Avatar of the Wolf. Oh my gosh, my brain is full of holes. And then the next game was Fate of the Weather Builders. Shit, why do I
Fate of
not
the
remember
Storm
the
Fate of
Gods?
the
Fate of
Storm
the Storm
Gods.
Gods? Jesus, thank you so much, Dave. Oh wow, I am really in a way. So those are the two games that I wrote. I'm so sorry if anyone from Twisted Games is watching. It's not that I don't love you. It's just that my brain is full of holes, and I also just recovered from COVID. So, ugh. Yeah. So most pressingly, I suppose, my book Empire the Feast is coming out with Neon Hemlock this September, I believe, and it is all about Empire. So I'm glad to be here and talking about this stuff with you guys.
All right, and last but certainly not least, the amazing, the wonderful, the recently celebrated the birthday, LD Lewis.
Yay! I just came off of a 7-hour road trip, literally 15 minutes ago. So my interjections into everyone else's intros were my trying to find my presence here. So hello, I am Elle. I am an author, a Hugo winner, one of the founders of Fire Literary Magazine, former art director, current project manager, current co-editor of Neon Hemlock's We're Here, the best of queer speculative fiction 2021. I have also had other appearances in Neon Hemlock and a bunch of other places. I am also the awards manager for Lambda Literary. And I also run the Ignite Awards and FIACon. And God, what else do I do? Is that it? I don't have to do the whole thing, right?
There's
You're too
probably
busy
more.
to remember.
I work with
all.
LeVar Burton. Like that's the thing.
Yeah,
that's the thing that I do.
Yeah.
I have a book. You know what? I gave all of the copies I have of the stuff that I've been published in print to my parents. And so I don't remember what I've done with my life anymore. And so I'm looking at the shelf. There's nothing here. But it's online. You can check it out at my website. I'll do this rights.com if you get bored at some point. But back to you, Brent.
All right. So, okay, now the introduction's out the way, just kind of like a brief little overview of what the panel is about for those who may not have gotten a chance. So this panel, we're basically going to be looking at power, marginalization, and identity through the lens of speculative fiction, but we're specifically going to hone in on the ways that the shadows of like colonization, slavery, and imperialism kind of inform our relationships with empire through a speculative fiction lens, right? So so that's kind of like what we're gonna do. It sounds lofty, and it is, but we are also very fun people, and we're gonna talk about this, and we'll be serious, but we'll also get some laughs in. So don't if you're tense, just relax your shoulders. This is gonna be fun.
Unclench.
All right, we'll side out. All right, so kickoff question. You want to take it, Elle, or you want me to?
Certainly. I can do that. All right. So the vastness of empire. You can tell I'm reading off of an email. The vastness of empire is one of not only military might, but also cultural weight. What are some examples of works that you've found engaged meaningfully with a nuanced understanding of empire, and what makes those work depictions meaningful? I will throw to Ebony first.
I'm so glad you did, because I want to take the easy answer first, which is that I just finished not that long ago The Unbroken, and that is like the thing that is top of my mind when I think about empire and the way empire is being written right now, and just the like complex relationship between Terrain and her princess, and how do you both like grow up in a culture that hates you and also want to strive and be important in that culture, and also deal with coming back to your own culture and not feeling attached to that. And just the way that C really got at that feeling and all of those emotions that come up, I think is relatable to, let me speak for myself, it's relatable to me as a person who has to deal with this oppressive culture we call America. And just the like nuances and deep depth of the relationships that are there, and the ways you have to deal with what's inside of you, what's outside of you, and how to combat all of those forces all at once, I think is just stunning.
Bendy?
Excuse me, that's that COVID. I am right now reading Moon Witch Spider King by Marlon James. And I think it has a really interesting relationship to empire, and like that, the empire, excuse me, the empire or empires in the novel aren't necessarily front and center, but the discord that happens because of kind of like these petty decisions of the decision makers in power sort of have this horrible trickle down effect on people who are otherwise just trying to live their lives. And it ends up in witch hunts and the persecution of the marginalized, and specifically tons of like violence and horrific things directed at women who are demonized for any number of reasons and persecuted for any number of reasons. And so as we were talking about building this panel and talking about some of the things like that, that world kept kind of coming back to me because of the kind of the way that it feels analogous to sort of what we're doing right now, living in this kind of, at least I can speak for the Americans among us probably, we're living in this kind of this state where decision makers are making decisions and we're just trying to, you know, deal with the price of milk, but it influences the texture of your life in really kind of horrifying ways that push you outside of yourself, alienate you from your neighbor, and just kind of force you into things that you, into kind of like ways of thinking and strategizing that you had never imagined that you would ever have to. So yeah, you know, fun stuff.
And Brent.
All right, so I have a couple examples of stuff I've read recently, or I've read in the past. The first one for me is Gutter Prayer. So in Gutter Prayer, it's basically, it's this secondary world fantasy, and it's about this island city. And it is basically, they are doing everything they can to stay the hell out of these empires' wars. They want to be neutral. They are like, I want no parts of what you guys are doing. But I found it to be interesting because you really had to see like the kind of moral and political and emotional negotiations that these people have to make with themselves in order to stay neutral. Because there are certain parties that are, they're definitely the more fucked up out of the warring parties, but they just don't want to be involved. So they do, and I thought it was really interesting, like all these competing interests in trying not to be involved. Like it was, yeah, it's a 3-book series. I haven't read the third one yet, but it just was a really interesting examination of like, what does it take to stay out of the paths of giants when they're fighting each other? And yes, I thought that was interesting. Another one that I think of is Savage Legion by Matt Wallace. And I think of that one because it approaches empire not as like this grandiose, like, you know, beautiful gowns and all that shit. It actually approaches it like as it's this empire of meaningless bureaucracy and how evil gets buried in that, how people get trampled in documentation, and how you can have this prison labor army existing with no one knowing it because it got buried in bureaucracy, right? And I was like, that is such an interesting way to tackle empire, because it is, I think, more true to like how things actually play out. Like evil is boring. Like a lot of evil is very boring, and it's easy to become apathetic to it because it's boring. And I think that's how the wheels of empire get to churn along. Last one I had was another one, slightly different, I think, but I think of the Craft Sequence series and from Max Gladstone, and how like it's empire, but more so of a corporate variety. Like, you know what does it take to keep these massive functions of government working on a daily basis, and like, you know, the the ropes and the pulls that we have to kind of do when interacting with each other to keep these illusions of stability in place. So yeah, those are my three.
Ebony, follow-up question?
Absolutely. So we just talked about how empire is explored in some work, particularly in secondary worlds. What aspects of empire are you drawn to in your own work? And what are some of the ways that you've depicted its effects in your fiction? There's a lot of F's in one period.
You did good, though.
Thank you. Elle, I'm gonna pick you first because we didn't hear from you on that last question.
Sure. Aspects of empire I'm drawn to. And this may be road trip brain, but the food. The way that cultures are sort of forced upon each other. And food is one of those things that becomes sort of more of an amalgamation than an assimilation, which is something that I think empire is more interested in. And so that's kind of my thing, and I'm starving. In terms of empire, in my own work, my novella, A Ruin of Shadows, it doesn't delve too much into empire outside of the development of this massive army, primarily child army. And that's born of different factions of a specific continent, married together, united against a common enemy that is there to rob people, specifically of their culture. Like, it's very on the nose in that way. And as a result of that, after this war, whatever is over, this empire, it doesn't disband. It's one of those things that's sort of promised in the beginning, but once certain entities discover that they have all this power and influence kind of centralized on themselves, they're kind of eager to hold on to it. And so the empire identity becomes this identity of unity, and you can suck people in and you can keep them there as long as you promise, that one sort of common goal thing. And so I like to kind of explore, I'm not gonna say there's anything positive about empire. I'm about dismantling absolutely everything. And that's what happens at the end of the book. Read it, it's great. Violently, in fact. I like that empire provides different cultures the ability to interact and to commingle and to develop blended aspects of their own cultures and the cultures that come from that. I don't like the alienation and the unseating of indigenous peoples that has to happen in order for empire to be a thing. And I don't think a lot of literature deals very well with the fact that, oh yes, like empire is an aesthetic, it's the seat of power, it's this grand thing. And once we are kind of in it in literature, it's okay, we've got the aesthetic, we've got the culture, we've got the garb, we've got the food or whatever. We don't really talk too much about the people who have not assimilated into the culture, unless we're creating a hero narrative in which these indigenous peoples are the catalyst for the hero's growth, something like that. So I like to stay away from things like that, unless of course somebody gets their head chopped off, which is totally my brand. But yeah, Brent.
Ooh, okay. So like Elle, I like not like, that's an awful word. I find interesting, fascinating. That's okay. I find fascinating what happens when like these different cultures collide, and the subcultures that come out of it are the cultural exchanges that come out of it. Like I saw online the other day, and it was actually, I was so glad this dude said it. They were talking about Korean fried chicken, and the guy was like, well, is that good because African-American soldiers taught it to you during the Korean War?
That was Iron Chef. Alton Brown said it.
Okay, I knew you would know, but I saw it and I was like, yes, say those things, because that's the kind of stuff I think that gets lost in the as the wheels of empire just keep grinding along, like these ways that like these cultures touch each other, and and it's complicated, it's complex because, you know, power dynamics and which group gets valued over the other group in these cultural exchanges. I mean, you know, you see it in music all the time. Like this particular discussion really irked me recently, where you saw a lot of people like, oh, house music, like that's some white folk stuff. And I'm like, you know nothing. Like that is ours. And it always has been ours. And then, you know, get digging deeper and people being like, oh, well, it was black gay men, so maybe that's why y'all don't like it so much. And you know, and just, yeah, so I'm interested in that, like digging into the ways that like these powers force people to interact in ways that they may or may not want to. Another thing I tried to explore in my own work, or that I like, you know, find fascinating with Empire too, is as much as like they put on this pomp and circumstance and these glorious things and blah, 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 they also hide and bury a lot of shit. And I am interested in those secrets, those things that they keep buried, those things that, you know, that they don't want to talk about because it affects the myth of, you know, who they are and what they are. And yeah, my novella that's coming out relatively soon, I think there's a couple of points where I look at, you know, like, oh, well, this government actually has did some really, really horrible things in the service of heroics or whatever. And yeah, that's what I'm interested in. And I think being the child of a soldier, like I know what the public view of that is versus what the everyday view of that is. And in the way that's like my childhood was my own little private window into one part of the machine of empire, and how like what you were told it wasn't actually what it was. So I think I'll dig into that with my fiction. So I think last one is Mindy.
Couple things that just really quickly I want to just kind of like leapfrog off of. Something that Elle said about the projection of unity that empire does. I think that is one of the things that is most kind of like interesting to kind of like pull apart, because in order to kind of expand, and I want to talk a little bit about like expansion in a second, but in order to expand, there's like this common enemy narrative often, that like there's these enemies, there's these barbarians at the gate, there's these people who want to change the essential nature of our culture, without any kind of like understanding that your culture is a tapestry and you have not paid the weavers. Like it's like I think a lot about Britain, because my parents are Jamaican immigrants, and recently like I was there with a friend whose parents are Indian immigrants, and a friend whose dad is a Greek immigrant. And at one point I just kind of like looked around and I was like, do we want to go around the room and just say how Britain fucked us? Like, do we want to just really quickly just like who here has been victimized by the UK? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it was just and like, yet still, like, you know, like if you look at like what is coming out of like the kind of like the British populist movement, it's all about like the external enemy, and we have to band together, and like this is how we will like save the empire. And the empire is and you can see this also in a lot of like Republican talking points. It is so we're not immune. I don't want to just shit on Britain, I want to shit on all of them. Like it is fascinating how the empire will both tell you that it is on the brink of losing its identity, like everything that you hold dear will be taken from you, and then at the same time there's this image of like perfect strength, like the empire can never be dismantled, the empire is eternal, the empire is perfect. And so it's like it's like this kind of like I don't want to be puerile or like misogynistic, but like the Madonna or whore kind of like complex, it feels very much a piece with that. Like I will deify whatever part of you is important to me in this moment, and then I will discard it immediately for like something else as soon as it comes along. And just to talk a little bit about my specific work, in my novella Empire of the Feast, Neon Hemlock 2022, woo woo. One of the things that is sort of like the base note of the story is that like Empire will find a way to turn anything into power. And in this specific novella, it's about how there's this like sex ritual that involves like all of these people and all of these bodies, and they just kind of, it's been turned into this like engine to create this kind of powerful kind of magical energy to keep this like monster that lives in the sun at bay, and like also as a kind of like tethered point to keep reincarnating the empress of this regime, because she is supposedly the only person who can do this work of like harnessing the power of like all of this sexual energy and using it to save the world. So it's like you have to take this person as your like your liege ultimately forever, because like no one else can do this. And the story starts on this kind of like failed reincarnation and all of the chaos that it brings into being. And I'm not gonna like press Brent to talk about this right now, but like his book also like really has a lot to say about Empire and kind of like the way that it pits its individual pieces against each other. And yeah, I might be saying too much even by saying that, but like it is phenomenal, and I can't wait for you guys to read it.
Well, I guess I should chime in at this. Okay, so the novella I'm writing, what I have written is called The Necessary Chaos. I think I said that earlier, but so basically the general gist of it is that there's these two men, and one is very much in service of his empire, and the other is very much against the idea of any empire. And they have basically, their respective organizations have had them in each other's orbit for a while, pretending to be in love, basically. And at some point, they both get this order from their respective sides that you need to get rid of the other. And so they have to grapple with, okay, what's more important, my feelings, because they realize they actually do have feelings. My personal feelings and my personal desires, personal wants are the wants and needs of these larger ideals that I serve. And that was me sort of like trying to grapple with, again, being the child of a soldier. And my brother is currently actually in the army, and we've had these discussions themselves where he's had, very much a crisis of like, well, why am I here? Why am I doing this? Like, is this worth being here? And, just kind of like parsing that idea of like, can you divorce your existence within the empire from your individual actions? And yeah, it gets spicy, but I think, I don't know, like when I wrote it, I wasn't trying to be smart when I was writing it. I'll say that. I was trying to actually just write a fun story, like a fun story with like two gay Black men, in the mix. And I guess maybe I said a couple of smart things along the way. Totally unintentional though. It was not trying to. We got the last one. Oh, not the last one. We got more questions though. But next one is you, Ben. You want to fire off that one?
Yeah, for sure. So empire doesn't affect everyone equally. Personhood is often a fraught state. Writers may or may not approach their work with this understanding, perhaps limited by their own biases or those of their viewpoint characters. What does that mean for you in your engagement with your work, in your engagement with your work as a reader or in your approach as a writer? Oh shit! I just say who. You're already talking, Brent. Just take it. Just go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. Wow. Okay. So this is often this is a deeper question actually, because I think like it's not just about the reader and the writer, but it's also like I have to apply this to everything in my life if I'm trying to live consciously as possible within this hellscape that we call Earth. I'm not even gonna say America, Earth. Like we're all like, if you literally examine any portion of any society in this world, there are parts of it that are just fucked. And so yeah, so I think anytime I approach any work or creating any new world or anything, I have to take into account like my own privileges in society and a global society, and how does that play out, and understand that like anything I read or anything I write, I am going to have blind spots. I can keep learning for the rest of my life. Unfortunately, I can keep learning for the rest of my life about how messed up we have been to each other as human beings and the ways we continue to be messed up to each other. So I have to take that into account, right? And I think one of the best things I've ever heard with like world building is, I want to say this, I don't want to misattribute, so I'm just gonna say the two people I think it is. It's either Tochi or it's Suyi. So whichever one of y'all said it, y'all can take the credit. But it was when you're building a world, ask who doesn't have power and why. And usually that is a good starting point for fascinating questions to come up in this world, for you to start thinking about, what POVs you want to touch on, what things, matter to you when you're building out this world and telling your story. As a reader, actually, yeah, so I think this is also one of those things. I think we see the discussion online in book Twitter all the time about like, what are your choices as a reader? What books are you choosing to read? What books are you choosing to consume? Are you actively thinking about, okay, am I reading people that aren't American? Am I reading people of different genders? Am I reading people of different sexualities? Or am I just like kind of wandering through the bookshop and looking for the prettiest cover? Which isn't wrong, if you do that, more power to you. But I think just in terms of like, yeah, understanding our own place in empire, you gotta look for the shadows. You gotta look for the places that are being ignored, the things that aren't being talked about. And yeah, and I think when you gotta apply that same philosophy to your writing. If your goal in writing is to examine empire in an incisive way. But I think that's why we're seeing the pushback in so many of these areas in terms of like, who can tell these stories, why are they telling them? Because white people, let's just keep it a buck. White people don't want to do that work. They don't want to necessarily have to do that work the simple idea of like, I think I saw somewhere in Texas, they're trying to call slavery forced transportation or something now. I don't know. I can't remember what it was. But it was like, how dare you? Like, how dare you? Like, this is the depths of your refusal to look at your empire in the way it has destroyed and caused just global destruction for hundreds of years. So yeah, so I think as writers, as readers, it's our responsibility, especially when we come from privileged places, to engage with your reading and your own writing in a very critical way of who's being given a voice and who's not being given a voice. So yeah, sorry I rambled there for a second, but all right, Ebony, I'm gonna pass it over to you.
Yeah, you didn't ramble. I appreciate everything you said, and I agree with a lot of it. I think as a writer, 9 times out of 10, I'm going to write the thing I intended to write. It's the editing process that is the place to stop and go, oh, why did I use that particular word? That's ableist. Why did I do that? Oh, who's not included here? Why is this character like this? Why is that character like that? What are the reasons? What are the things that are coming up that I didn't even notice I did while I was writing it, because I can't see necessarily what the empire has done to me, but I can review it afterwards and have an opportunity to stop and pause and say, okay, I want to be conscious about the decisions that I'm making. And I think, to Brent's point, there are a lot of people who don't want to have to do that, and who don't want to have to stop and think about, like, who's someone who's not like me who might read this and review it and have questions about why I said a certain thing, or be offended that I said a certain thing. And I think when reading, there is this, like, this making the conscious choice to read things that are outside of oneself that has to happen in order to be able to just understand other people in a way that I think is meaningful. And, you know, if you only ever get your books by walking into a bookstore and looking at the shiny books they put out for you to review and look at, you're never going to read anything that's all that interesting. I don't care how amazing the work is, it probably is going to be very good, it's going to be well written, but you're probably missing those wide breadths of amazing work that is out there, because those are not necessarily the things that get pushed to the top of the shelf that even make it into a bookstore necessarily, right? Like, there's a lot of great work. I'm looking at this crew right here that may not be in your bookstore, local or otherwise, not because it's not incredible, but because that's not the way our book buying process is built. It's not built to get you every little somebody who's writing an amazing work. It's built to get you the things that people think are going to make them a lot of money. And isn't that just empire in a nutshell? So there is this, like, need to look beyond what is easy for you to access, and that is a little bit of work. It does take a little bit of time. I try and challenge myself at the top of the year to do, like, a couple little things that are outside of what I might find very easily, or things that don't appear on a list, and, like, figure out what are the things I want to read that are not the things that probably would have fallen into my lap. And I think most people could probably do a better job of that, which is not to say that I'm perfect at doing it. It's more to say that we could all be a little bit better about doing that. We all have blind spots that we're not looking at, that we don't even realize. When is the last time I read a speculative fiction work by a disabled author? I don't know. I haven't thought about it. I haven't even really looked and paid attention. And all of those little things can add up to be making you a better writer, because you just think about them differently when you go back and think about your actual work on the page, because you've read that work and you've experienced it. And so you can ask yourself more questions, and you can read language that you might not have read that will help you to think about the way that you're thinking about your language. Elle?
Both of your responses were very interesting, because that's not what I took from the question at all. It's like, wait, am I
No, I think I know which way you're going to go, and I'm hoping I'm going to get, because I feel like in the moment I was like, I don't know which direction, so I just like drove off the street. So
your interpretation is always correct. I'm doing what everyone else is doing, but what you said is correct. I don't know what you're going to say, but it's right.
I don't know. I'm like, okay, so do I answer that question or whatever they just said?
No, go with it.
All right, so the question refers to personhood. And I think that changes within the framework of an empire. People cease to be people. They are slotted into roles. You are in a position in life, you have a specific job or whatever, because its function serves the need of the empire. And so that can be, I mean, like your job as, you know, the mail delivery guy, your job, however small it is, could simply be designed to keep you busy so that you're too exhausted to battle the empire at some point. So there's, I don't look, when I look at characters within like an empire framework in literature, it's more, it's what is this person's role in the empire, and then what's their relationship to it? And those are two different questions. The relationship to it is, pro, against, or, just kind of suffering through, whatever it is your personal Dogma is that gets you through the day within, you know, you're this tiny little cog in this big old machine. And, you know, you may not be the fighting type. So, you know, that's your lot, and you're going to continue to live it, and you're going to determine that other things in your life, your family or whatever, are significantly important, and that you don't need to be worried about, you don't need to be preoccupied with whatever it is the empire is doing with you. So when I'm thinking about roles, that's laborers, that's government, that's royals. What happens to the royals who are born into in this case it's a monarchy. So what happens to the royal who is born into a position that the empire has dictated they are going to fulfill after the empire falls? They have had a role this entire time, and now they don't. So when I'm looking at the characters, their growth in service of the empire, and then how they relate to it, those are my two major things. I think it's very easy to get caught up in like a class-based system. It's very kind of rote. It's a Western civilization thing. We've all grown up in it. That's where we're gonna go. We're gonna gravitate there naturally. And I like to get into some other more nuanced kind of views of things. I don't think things necessarily have to be based in class. I'd like to look more at a character's relationship to the empire and whether or not they choose to have one. And so those are things I try to explore more with my characters. Those are the things that excite me when I see them in other books. But that's where I thought the question was going.
Actually really like that you took it there though. Like,
I mean, okay, so yeah, and then we go like, okay, biases, yes, but like those are also, that's a product of the empire of which you're a part, the thing, you know, that you're living in currently. And are you projecting that onto the character, or are you forcing them into a different form of empire in order to have them, you know, give them a fresh set of obstacles or whatever to deal with? So that's where I thought we were going.
Oh, that's cool.
You know,
I think, yeah, no, that's cool. I think that like actually to kind of piggyback off you, I think that speaks to some of the power in like speculative fiction, is that we can imagine these new ways to examine power and how these systems of government oppression might work, because you can create your own world. You can really sit back and think like does this world really need slavery? Did we have to do that? Did we like? Can we not? Or if we have to, then why is it necessary for it to be there? But I think so many people, particularly in fantasy, epic fantasy, will just be like, oh, well, this is how it was. So, and it's like, okay, but they weren't dragons. you thought about inserting that in there. That was a choice. So why do you need to have people be made into property? So yeah, I think what you had to say was really cool there. Sorry, I live by an airport, so you know.
You're fine. So do I. You've been here. It's the same thing.
Yeah, I'm gonna piggyback off of Brent's piggyback, which is that like I totally agree that writing spec fic is an opportunity to explore what happens if the traumas that were enacted on you weren't enacted on someone else, and like a good opportunity to look back and say, okay, and now what am I pushing onto my characters? It is your regular reminder to like go to therapy and talk through things and like deal with your shit, because it's gonna come up in your writing. You don't think so. You think you're writing this really cute little story that's like very nice and just like real fantastical, and then something's gonna come up and you're gonna go, oh shit. I haven't dealt with
someone
that,
else.
Apparently.
Someone else is going to go, oh shit, when it gets published.
Absolutely. And then you're going to deal with someone coming back to you and saying, this is what you made me realize. Hello.
Yeah. I remember before I came out, it was like a few years before I came out, I was writing this awful story I will never see the light of day, but it was a fantasy novel, and I gave it to my friend who was like interested in reading it, and so he came up to me like a week later, and he was like, does everyone know you're gay? And I was like, what do you mean? and he was like, Brent. And so he sat me down and was like, look at how you describe this. Look at how you describe this man. Look at this. He's like, these are not straight things. So to every point, if you're not ready for certain things to be out there, either keep that thing in the drafts or go to therapy so you know you can work it out. One or the other.
That is awesome.
Yeah. This is also a great moment, I think, to shout out editors. Like, they keep us from showing our whole ass in front of everybody all the time. So big shout out to all the editors for just keeping some of the not straight things in the draft.
Yeah. And we have Dave here, so thank you, Dave.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you, Dave.
All right, so okay. So keeping this train moving. All right, we're talking about Empire. We talked about, like what status is, like how the weight of Empire kind of like we engage with it in our reading, in our work. But okay, I'm gonna ask a little frivolous question here. Favorite fictional empires? Like what fictional empires like did you really dig? And it doesn't have to be because obviously none of us subscribe to any of the ideas of empire, but fiction lets you kind of release whatever. So favorite fictional empires. What did you like about them, and how do you hope that they came to a fiery ruin if they didn't in the actual text?
Funny that you say fiery ruin, because of Fire Nation, Avatar: The Last Airbender. That was my favorite, primarily because it gave me great villains. It gave me great anti-heroes, like between what's his face, Zuko and his sister. I love her. I'm so sad she snapped at the end. It's fine, whatever. But the development, the backstory, how a lot of it is just so rooted in it's simply the interpersonal conflicts of people who have power that gave birth to a nation. That's literally all that happened. And they had enough power that it couldn't be usurped. So it was that was my favorite. I don't think I've found one to replace it yet.
All right, Ebony, you got one?
I am trying to think. I feel like in my youth, I don't know if y'all read those Tortal novels by what is her name? Come on, it's like the main character's name is Alana or Alana, and there's like a whole long, wide, like intermixing world of these Tortal stories. Okay, nobody's getting me. Tamora Pierce, thank you, Dave. Dave knows what I'm talking about. Thank you, somebody.
Dave has been very clutch in the chat.
Yeah, he's been saving us.
He's
just
here.
We need.
Great.
So those Tamora Pierce novels, which are so it's a woman who decides to dress as a boy so that she can actually become a knight in the kingdom, and she's dealing with like the kind of difficulties that come with hiding your gender and living in a dormitory, and dealing with all of those fun things, and also with being a knight of the realm and having to go off and win wars on behalf of your king or do things you don't want to do. She like ends up, I think, with the Rose, who's like robbing empire, and also she's in love with the prince guy. It's very complicated. I love a messy relationship background. If you don't know me, that's my whole brand. But I have always really enjoyed those novels, and the way that all of those relationships sort of tie and wind together across many different like cultural systems. So there's like Alana in her system. There is another character who is from a more, I'm going to use the word primitive, even though it's the worst word on the planet, but she's from a more primitive tradition. And so like her experience coming into this realm and like dealing with their people, just, I really liked it. I think it probably is trash overall, and I don't know about Tamora Pierce all that much, but I would bet all those people died horrifying deaths in the end, and if they didn't, there's a dragon somewhere that's willing to burn the whole shit down.
All right, Mindy, you got a.
I this one is like making me rack my brain a little bit, but I think the first thing that came to mind isn't from literature or it's the first thing that I thought of was the world of Dragon Age, which is a series of role-playing games, and there's multiple like different kind of empires, but a lot of what is kind of a lot of what like sets them apart is their treatment of mages in this world. And sorry, something happened in the chat. I shouldn't have been paying attention in the middle of trying to talk. But a lot of what happened, a lot of like what sets these different empires apart is their treatment of mages, which is like magic in this world is like super unstable and like terrifying. And it's sort of like asks the question of like how much humanity you're willing to give someone who is a sort of like living weapon in your eyes. And there's also some like other shitty treatment of like elves, and like there's a lot of like fantasy racism, but actually like now that I'm thinking about it, I'm like, is this my favorite empire? Probably not, but it's the first thing to mind, because of like because the differences are so stark, and like between like how people, even mages themselves, might just be like, this is like I know what I'm capable of, and I think that it's so outsized compared to like what everybody else is capable of that I have to be moderated, and I have to like wear the chains of empire to like keep myself from like blowing up, you know, random things. So I think it's like an interesting question that I don't know that necessarily, I feel like it's a question that I'm not necessarily sure the series is ready to tackle, like really like holistically. But I think it is a fascinating question. And it's like those kind of like, you know, questions of like, if it's your life on the line and the life of everyone you love, like, will you still support like a freer world? I think like is a question that is really interesting and fascinating to me, especially like in the through the lens of empire, just seeing how everybody kind of responds to that.
That was good. All right. So we're almost at time. I think we have like 7 minutes left. So I think we'll do one last, everyone just tell everyone where you can be found on the internet, anything you want to hype up, and then yeah, we can call it a day. So I will start with you, Elle. Where can people find you, and anything you want to hype up for us?
I'm on Twitter, and to a much lesser extent, Instagram at ELLE the villain, for reasons to be sorted later. You can find my my list of written things on my website, ldlewiswrites.com. It's being revamped. I apologize, but everything's there. I am also again guest or co-editing Neon Hemlock's We're Here, the best queer literature of 2021. That'll be out, I believe, in September. Correct me in the chat if I'm wrong, Dave. And that's it for me. Wear your mask.
All right. We will go to Ebony next.
You can find me by my website, which is just ebonydunbar.com, and that's Ebony with an I. Don't be confused by this. Ebony's with a Y. You can also find me on Twitter at the same thing. It's just at Ebony Dunbar. Don't try and look for me on Instagram because it's much harder. If you want to look for me on Instagram, you got to go to the website first and then try it. Let's see, what else have I got? Oh, just, you know, buy Stone and Steel. You're going to go to the Neon Hemlock website. You're going to buy Brent's book. You're going to buy Bendy's book. While you're there, just throw mine in the cart as well. You're already spending the money. You're going to pay shipping. One more book won't hurt you. I promise. I don't even care if it sits in your TBR for 3 years. Just add it to the pile. That's it.
All right, Mindy, I'm gonna let you throw on the pile here.
Okay.
Correctly, yeah.
Okay, perfect. Well, you can find me at you can find me at benmakestuff.com. And I'm on Twitter super intermittently. I am so sorry. At Bendied. So it's like BENDI ED, but like I didn't realize that it also could be perceived as Ben died. I'm still alive. I'm still alive. Also, and also so my book, Empire of the Feast, is coming out, I believe, also in September. Dave, tell me if I'm a liar. Fall. Let's say fall. It's fine. Also, I write like spicy stuff. You can like under the pen name Benji Bright, you can find me at Benji_Bright on Twitter, and all that stuff is on the website. So thanks for just being here, everybody. Like, this was really awesome, and it was really super dope hearing all of your thoughts on Empire and how it needs to come to fiery ruin.
I ended it with the right phrase on the last question. As for myself, I can be found on Twitter at Brent C. Lambert. I do have Instagram, but I'm gonna warn anyone right now, that is not a writing page. That is Brent living his best life page. So if you decide to follow me, just don't come there expecting book stuff. There's just not a lot of that going on over there. What else? I have a website, brentclambert.com. It does need a little bit of updating. I promise we'll get to that. But yeah, it's there.
Also mention Hugo things.
Oh, yes. We are, myself, as is Elle and Ebony, all three of us are currently Hugo nominees. So we would love your support in our various categories. As I said, I'm up against myself in the same category. So, you got two options for me. So yeah, there you go. My novella from Neon Hemlock is also coming out in fall. I unfortunately have to be against Bendy's amazing Empire of the Feast. So, I'm just don't blow me out the water there, Bendy. But no, so it's coming out in the fall, and yeah, you can go to the website, Neon Hemlock. You can definitely order it. Yeah, and his is definitely spicier than mine.
Like I don't want to like foster unhealthy competition here. Like, the books they're brothers. Like, yeah, the books are brothers. You read them together, you read them back to back, whatever order. It's gonna be horny people against Empire. I mean, you can't lose. It's a win-win.
True, it's a win-win. So that's good brand. That's how we're gonna brand it. The horny Empire package. So it's been amazing to be with everyone tonight. Y'all have been great. Again, yeah, this was amazing. Check us all out. We got work coming your way. So yeah, just continue to support, and thank you for having us.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Bye.